everybody. This is Francesco Abbruzzino. We are coming to you live and unedited and basically unscripted. The phone line is down. I'm having issues with it, so we're not having it up. We're just going to do the talk part with me talking today. And we got a lot of local news to cover and then national news that impacts us locally. I did conduct an interview and I did put out a couple rants today, so we'll probably cover some of those too. Good things happening. It looks like I'm gonna more and more like we got the Saturday radio deal that's gonna probably go through. I'll have more info hopefully next week, and it may expand to more if I have the time. So good things happening on that front. Again, I'm being told by my wife and everyone, look for sponsors. So I mentioned it at this show, the FrancescoAbbruzzinoShow.com. You can go there. There's a store there if you want to purchase some apparel or longevity. Also, advertising rates, here's a section there. So I'm not big on trying to get the sponsorships for some reason. And this is one more thing. This is truly a one-man show. You have me doing the hosting, the research, the technical aspects. So if I look busy, it's because I'm doing some technical stuff. I do the website, the set up the interviews, everything. So truly a one-man show. So let's go ahead and get you guys over to a split screen and get started on some of the local news. A lot of this stuff was put out today. There wasn't a lot of news over the 4th of July weekend. But today it started filtering in at a rapid pace. If you do want to reach me, I do have my Sarasota Scoop email up, so you can go on there and ask any questions. I'll try to address them on the air since we do not have the phone line up. But basically, after successfully hosting the 2014 World Cup final last month, Sarasota Bradenton has been confirmed as the host for the sport's first World Cup event in 2015. The games are scheduled for February 18th through the 22nd. They'll draw athletes from 40 countries who will try to qualify for the World Cup 2016, which is also held here in Bradenton. That is on the 2015 Pentathlon World Cup opener. We're not talking soccer here, folks. And this was an interesting article on the zombie homes, which you're seeing a lot lately. Due to the market conditions, due to the housing bubble that hit everybody. And basically, the gist of it is what you're seeing is that the banks didn't respond. They didn't have adequate resources. They didn't respond in a timely manner the way they should have. But it's basically been 7 years. And that's passed in Southwest Florida, had that downturn which pushed the region into a recession, bringing about evictions of tens of thousands of area residents through the foreclosure process. The Herald-Tribune investigation shows that some of the largest mortgage lenders in the country still struggle to process these defaults even when there's no homeowner left to fight. And they're calling them the zombie foreclosures. Abandoned properties that have started the default process but have not yet been repossessed or auctioned continue to haunt the middle-class neighborhoods throughout the area. We got a few of those here in Pine Brook. There are nearly 1,600 such homes languishing throughout South Florida. Federal insured banks are sitting on nearly $200 million in local real estate assets that they cannot reel in. As late as June, mortgage lenders had started the foreclosure process on 1,587 zombie properties in Sarasota and Manatee counties. Borrowers have already deserted their homes, but a slew of problems have prevented the banks from taking control. And they say basically that the newspaper went out, they did this investigation, they checked the tax bills and everything, and they came back and said that basically the banks have yet to auction off or repossess about just under $200 million worth of distressed real estate assets in both Manatee and Sarasota County. They're saying that these zombies range from derelict duplex units in urban Bradenton to middle-class homesteads in Sarasota, and even a mansion in Casey Key with the highest value being at $6.2 million, and that's at a house over in Osprey Estate, 10,000 square foot house. Some of the properties were seized by homeowners associations before the blink could get them. So others were taken by the city over delinquent taxes. The mortgage services chastened the federal government for abusing foreclosure process guidelines and ordered to pay more than $25 billion in relief to distressed borrowers are sitting on the most. So that's basically it. I mean, it's not a surprise. I don't know if the Herald was just looking for something to put out because there was nothing in the news cycle. I never heard them called the zombie home, so that's a new terminology thrown out there. But you're seeing them everywhere. And, you know, I'll drive through Pine Brook, and there's just Lucaya here. I think there's about 2 homes, and I think they're zombie distressed homes because the grass is up to my knees. They're vacant. Nobody's in there. So I'm assuming they're within that zombie term of deserted houses. So there you have it. It's you know, I don't know if this housing crisis is going to get any better. If you listen to a lot of people, they're expecting another housing bubble burst. And it's not like we've seen a tremendous increase, an incremental increase in housing, yet they're expecting some kind of correction on the housing. They're expecting a correction on the market. They're expecting, if you listen to a lot of the financial guys out there, within a year, they're painting this dire picture of the financial markets, the housing markets, and everything out there. Let's go back over here to train on the new standards. And this is the teachers of Sarasota County. They were basically they're gathering for free. They're not getting paid. And there's nearly 500 Sarasota County teachers and administrators, and they'll be trained on the new state education standards. It's voluntary training. Staff members won't get paid to come for a 9-hour-a-day at Sarasota County Technical Institute. The training on the Florida standards, a tweaked version of Common Core. Folks, it's Common Core. I'm going to play my rant after this on Common Core. There's nothing. All it did was basically add like 86 lines on there on basically dealing with calculus, and I think it was on the reading or writing. And it's basically Common Core, but Scott wanted to be able to go out to his constituents and say, look, I took us off of Common Core just because he got rid of Common Core and all the language, all the literature. And now we're doing the Florida Standard, which is Common Core. It's crazy. The training will be grouped by different grade levels on July 29th through the 31st, so teachers can become more familiar with the incoming students and what they've already been taught and what children need to know for the next grade. 8th grade teachers will learn about the standard with high school teachers. Teachers in grade K3 and grades 4 and 7 will be trained together to better understand what the students are learning in these different grades and what they're supposed to know. And that brings up the this article, and it's basically, this is a quick video, and it's the wonders of modern education. This came out this week, and you know, at first I saw that article on the teachers getting trained on Florida standards, and then I saw this video, and I just started shaking my head at this poor girl, and just what it's a sad statement of what our education system's like out there. So let's take a quick listen to this, and then we'll probably go into my rant that I did a couple weeks ago.
Happy New Year's, everyone. I hope you guys have a safe, fun day, and you guys need to be more appreciative because this earth is 2014 years old. That's a long time. Nigga, we made it. The presidents, they fought for freedom. Whoa. Without the president's help, we would not be free right now. So, yeah, instead of, just partying and stuff, you guys should actually, be thankful and, pray to the, presidents because they actually, gave us freedom. So, bye.
So, the presidents gave us freedom, and they fought for our freedom. I think the only president that the couple presidents that fought, Washington, Truman, but... All right. And here is my rant on Common Core. I'll bring you guys to a full screen.
Hey everybody, this is Francesco Abbruzzino with another Rogue Rant. And what am I ranting about today, you may ask? Common Core. Is it rotten to the core in Florida? Did the governor drop Common Core? Or is it some grand illusion? Just rotten to the core is what I say. Here in Florida, a recently signed bill removes all references to Common Core from state law, and the governor has declared that the core is out in the state. But is it really out? That's my question. Our lovely governor has flip-flopped on the issue, just like Charlie Crist has with his party affiliations. In the past, he has been reluctant to take a stance on the standards, which he at one point supported, folks. Rather than specifically renounce the core, he prefers to say that the Florida state standard is now 100% a Florida educational standard. Here's a quote from the governor. I like to be positive and say what I am for, not what I am against. Is he just playing word games with me? After all, don't standards that mirror the core remain in place? That's the question. The governor has responded to growing voices of his constituents by requiring public hearings on the standards, which have resulted in nearly 100 changes and the new rebrand of the standards. Also, Florida has opted out of Common Core, the park, and instead decided to pursue testing through another company, the American Institute for Research. However, folks, I am here to tell you that in reality, Florida is still very much Common Core. We need the state to totally, completely scrap Common Core and rewrite the state standards so that they are higher than the Common Core and reflect improvements in the academic achievements and competitiveness with our youth. The Florida standards are actually the Common Core with some additional window dressing and some 98 additional items, which are mostly related to cursive writing and calculus instructions. Scott says that the Florida standard is derived from the next generation Sunshine State Standard, which was derived from an earlier version of the Sunshine State Standards. These standards are predated Common Core and are truly Florida's own standards. Again with the political answer, why? I am totally confused now. Over the last year, what once was seen by many as a small group of Tea Partiers has swelled into a statewide gathering of thousands of teachers, parents, and members of the public who say Common Core is the wrong step for the future education of the Sunshine State. The Common Core State Initiative is widely denounced for imposing confusing and unhelpful experimental teaching methods. These methods have created problems that lack essential information or make no sense whatsoever. Some 45 states and D.C. have so far Common Core standards opted in, leaving students all around the United States puzzled over the mysterious logic and language devised in accordance with the new methods, folks. Common Core came about with insufficient public dialogue or feedback from experienced educators, no research, no pilot or experimental programs, and no evidence at all that a floor-length list created by unnamed people attempting to standardize what is taught is a good idea, when indeed it's a bad idea, folks. Let's just ignore the fact that specific Common Core state standards will open up enough cans of worms to keep subject matter specialists arguing amongst themselves forever. There are some other issues with this. Standards should not be attached to school subjects, but to qualities of the mind that I am hoping the study of school subjects promotes. The Common Core standards assume that the information kids need to know is covered by one or another of the traditional core subjects. What is that saying? Never assume it makes an ass out of you and me? Look, the world changes, folks. The future is indiscernible. Clinging to static strategy in a dynamic world may be comfortable, even comforting, but it's a titanic deck chair exercise. So much orchestrated tensions being showered on Common Core standards, the main reason for the poor student performance is being ignored. Common Core basically kills innovation. Common Core standards are set up for national standardized tests. These are tests that can't evaluate complex thought, they can't avoid cultural bias, they can't measure nonverbal learning, and they can't predict anything of consequence. The word standards gets an approving nod from the public because it means performance that meets a standard. However, the word also means like everybody else. and standardizing minds is what the standards try to do. The Common Core standard stated aim is for success in college and careers. That is at best pedestrian and at worst an affront. Let's not get into the data mining by the government. That's a whole nother story. I even have more issues that have to do with the quality of the education, and the pursuit of the education quality isn't what's driving the present education reform farce. The bottom line is that Common Core has become part of the corporate reform project that is now stalking our schools. As schools struggle with these new mandates, we should defend our students, our schools, and ourselves by pushing back against implementation timelines, resisting the stakes and priorities attached to these tests, and exposing the truth about the commercial and political interests shaping this false panacea for problems in our school that our schools face. Here's the bottom line, folks. The bottom line is that Common Core is rotten to the core in Florida. This has been Francesco Abbruzzino.
Common Core is rotten to the core in Florida. So, hey, look, a lot of issues with it, folks. And, I don't know if our current system is the best system. Obviously, we have a lot of issues there. But then Common Core, to me, I don't get it. Why would I want a kid to take 3 minus 2 comes to 1 and change it to do this extravagant calculation, and if he comes out with 2 instead of 1, it's still right if he did the process correctly. That just doesn't make sense. Another issue is you're sort of keeping up at a standard, and like my daughter, I've used her before as an example. Next year she's taking a few college courses, and she's in 10th grade. And she's excelling. This year she took honors geometry, honors algebra, and all that stuff. Well, with Common Core, it's a little different. I don't think you can progress as much, and it sort of restrains you or holds you back. I could go on and on, but most of it was covered in that rant. And let's go on to my next, the news here, where we cover Siesta Key Parking. This is a new parking lot they opened up. Something I didn't realize is when they have special events like the 4th of July event that they recently had, they reserve a bunch of those spots in this new lot. And they're reserved for people that paid X amount of dollars to basically support the fireworks show, which is a pretty good idea. But a lot of residents are concerned that this may become an ongoing, reoccurring theme. It says that the fantasy parking didn't last long, however, especially on the holiday weekend at Siesta, which is rated #1 beach in the nation by Dr. Beach. By 11 a.m., the parking lot was full. By noon, drivers were circling for spots in the new lot, too. Admired design and landscape for the first phase of the $21 million renovation project for Siesta Beach, Traffic Islands, Sport Palms, and sea grapes, shrubs, and sunflowers. In the next year, the rest of Siesta's parking area will be replaced. The beach pavilion will be renovated. New pedestrian esplanade will run the length of the beach. To get more and keep track of it, you can go to siestabeachinfo.com. And I think there was another one on this phase 2, basically the same story. And this is where they were coming in and saying, hey, look, all the parking was taken up. This was from Rebecca Vargas, and this one's WWSP. The last one was the Tribune. It says that it's no longer tourist season on the Suncoast, but parking along the Siesta Beach can still be a challenge. That is hopefully being eased with the opening of the new parking lot at the main public access point. Phase 1 of the Siesta Improvement Project is now completed, but with opening of the new parking lot, but when many came to park for the fireworks opening day, a majority of the spots were already reserved. Out of 100 available parking spots, 50 were reserved for VIPs. And for the past 24 years, they've been hosting a VIP party to raise $40,000 needed to make the fireworks happen, which is strange. Here in Venice, we only need $10,000. Man, $40,000, that must be pretty spectacular. The VIPs are those that actually paid to put on the fireworks. They paid $150 for 2 tickets and reserved parking. pass in order to attend. So, and it says down there that frequent beachgoers are concerned reserving spaces for events could happen more often and defeat the purpose of having the additional parking space. Look, I don't think that's going to happen, folks. You see, whenever there's special events like that, you know, how many of these guys didn't pay for the fireworks, yet they're bitching about not being able to park during that? The people that pay for the fireworks have parking. Give me a break, folks. Next one is Southgate Mall. This is the only downside to doing this show this way is I got to pull each one up, and there's a little bit of lag time there. But okay, this is on the Westfield Group Southgate Mall. The Australian shopping complex operator is going to invest millions in an ongoing redevelopment plan for Sarasota's first luxury retail center. Luxury retail center. Phase 1 of the Westfield Southgate renovations were completed earlier this month. They include new bathrooms, light fixtures, new family-friendly lounges for shoppers with children, new landscape, and several other minor decor theme additions. In Southgate, it became, in a broader refurbishment, Southgate is to become Westfield's Siesta Key, an outdoor dining, shopping, and entertainment lifestyle center with another 46,000 square feet for retail and restaurant space geared towards residents and tourists. So they're changing the name of the Southgate over to the Westfield Siesta Key Mall. If you ever hear that name, you know where it's at. Main Street, they're closing it down primarily for construction that is taking place. A lot of people are concerned about possibly losing some business out there. A lot of people thought they would make more money during this whole boating show that took place, but a lot of people said they would have been better off just closing. And what they're trying to do is just basically, the idea is to allow Main Street to flow unencumbered so that the brick and mortar businesses can continue to do well, according to the city manager, Tom Barwin. He says that the city initiated the moratorium for reasons concerning the new construction, and by fall, we could very well have over 1,000 hotel rooms and 1,000 new apartments under construction, according to Barwin. So a lot of surface parking will be consumed with construction vehicles, workers, and of course the State Street Garage will be under construction. So just keep that in mind if you're going up to Main Street. Next, the Bayfront. This is on the part of the agenda today with the city commissioner. Just to remind everybody, on Wednesday, I will be interviewing Sarasota City Commissioner Paul Carajul. He is running for the county commission seat, and I have not heard back, but Ms. Coe may be interviewing too. And depending on, what's this? I am logged in. All right, hold on, folks. Let me log in real quick. This is one of those things that should not be happening. Okay. And there we go. All right. That was great. Thank you, Tribune. Let's get back. Bayfront Development tops Sarasota's board agenda. What happened is really weird. A couple weeks ago, they went to the county and did not bring any city reps along with them. This organization that is meeting with the city today to discuss it. And what's it? The group is called, I forgot, Bayfront 2020. So they went there, and I think it was Barbetta or someone said, hey, look, I'm a little concerned because there's no reps from the city here. Why did you guys bypass the city? They're a key player in this. You need to go back to them, send them back to them. Bayfront development enthusiasts will update the city on their efforts today, even as others eye the area around the former Quay area. For 4 months, Michael Klauber, chairman of the Visit Sarasota County Board of Directors, and Virginia Haley, the tourism entity president, have been organizing meetings to draw interest into Sarasota's Bayfront area. Today, they will ask the City Commission to endorse their work and commit to holding a City Commission workshop in the fall. Working under the banner Bayfront 2020 is trying to organize nonprofits, residents, and business interests to create a plan for developing the area around the quay. The stretch of land includes some of the most valuable property in Southwest Florida, but much of it has been unused for years under the control of the city, banks, and private owners. City commissioners have been reluctant to get involved without a development deal in hand. And when a proposal mysteriously appeared earlier last month, they quickly distanced themselves from it. A leaked document outlined a major bayfront development proposal to include a new $100 million moat aquarium and hotel and orchestra hall. The proposal was written by developers who hope to use the city revenue bonds to help finance the project. It is news to the city commissioners, and the city staff said that nothing has been brought to their attention for public financing. So there you have it on the Bayfront. They were discussing it today. I have no idea where they went with the meeting, how it went, any information I'll have. I'll pass out probably on the Sarasota Scoop page. This is interesting. I did not realize this. This is on Longboat Key, and these are just some pictures of trash and stuff that people leave behind. You can see right there in this picture, you got a turtle nest right there. And somebody's left their junk right along there. Well, the way the story goes is last week, Molten Marine released these photos of sea, and one of the photos had a sea turtle stuck under a beach chair in Longboat Key. Turtle Watch volunteers had to free the animal. This week, Turtle Watch volunteers took photos of turtle tracks, which indicate that another sea turtle had a beach chair stuck to it, and he was pulling it around. He managed to drag it towards the water, where the turtle then managed to get free. Cindy Seaman is a Longboat Key Turtle Watch member, stated that the photo shows that flipper marks in the sand, and it showed that, hey, he was coming up to do the eggs and all that good stuff. She says that the surrounding municipalities, such as Venice, Holmes Beach, Bradenton Beach, and the city of Anna Maria, all have ordinance regulating removal of beach furniture in the evening for ease of sea turtles and hatchlings. Juan Florenza said that the town of Longboat is following the state Florida laws governing sea turtle lighting, which, according to Florenza, is all it's currently required to do, as defined by the fact that the several types of sea turtles that nest in Longboat's beaches are either on the threatened or endangered species list. Some residents are upset. They're saying, hey, look, it's fine. You're doing what you're supposed to via the state, but are you morally doing the right thing? Are you doing the right thing for these turtles? And sometimes, I tell you, it gets expensive. It's a pain in the butt with the lighting and everything, but you got to look at the big picture here, folks. Now, first of all, you got to talk to the idiots that are leaving this garbage on the beaches. And why would Longboat want that left on the beaches? I would think you'd want it off with the tourism, how it impacts it negatively. That, you got your turtles that are dragging furniture. Obviously, they need to get a plan in action to clean up their beaches at night, like all the other cities around here. And we'll see what happens with that story out at Longboat. And this is on Caralujo and Snyder. These two people, these two guys, Shannon Snyder and Paul, they're in this race. They're both Republicans, and they're vying to replace Barbetta. Barbetta sort of picked Paul as the person he wants to replace him, and they're leaving no doubts that it will. What they're doing is it's coming down. One of the issues is who's got a better pulse on the community. Paul is a restaurant owner, and he says he knows what it's like to run a small business day to day. Snyder is a retired sheriff's deputy. He says he's been a better friend to business, pointing out that while both have been Sarasota County commissioners, he's the only one who's never voted to raise business fees for taxes. In 2011, when both Snyder and Paul were new to the board, the city voted 3-2 to raise city property tax rate to close a budget gap. Snyder was one of the no votes. Paul disagreed with Snyder's interpretation of that vote. He said after the forum that it was not a tax increase, but was about restoring property tax rates to where they were before the rate rollback was instituted years earlier. Now, Paul, it's a tax increase, Paul. Sometimes they crack me up with how they try to spin it. Paul will be on the show on Wednesday, and we can ask him about that. But, hey, give him credit for trying to spin his way out of there. And this is a video of the drone that flew over the boat race. I thought it was pretty neat, so I thought we'd just take a quick second and check it out. So Here we go. Thought it's neat. I always love those drone shots out there, and I'm actually would love to get a drone, but they run about $1,500, and unless you can justify it, it just doesn't make sense from a financial standpoint. Longboat Key. This story just came out, and it's about Longboat Key residents wonder if the wires underground are a more attractive alternative than the new style poles that are being put up along Mexico Drive. The Longboat Town Commission revisited an earlier decision about the proposed improved hardened poles to keep electricity driving the reopening of the discussion was realization that the new poles are powerfully ugly. One alternative is to bury the utility lines so that it's not a new idea. That is not a new idea or an inexpensive one. Yeah, it's not inexpensive, but come on, folks, Longboat Key. They're too ugly for you? Are you kidding me? Ironically, the town will again discuss whether to go underground or not with the electrical utilities the way they are. So, Longboat Key, making the news a couple times with some silliness today. Warm Mineral Springs, this is just a blog that an individual put out today, and you know what? Pete Emmerich, who's running for the Northport City Commission, I'm trying to get him on for an interview where we were trying to set it up right now, but he came out and said there was a meeting, but it didn't seem like they went anywhere. It seems like they were stalled. Not really a meeting. There was some form of communication yesterday. This blog is from this individual. What's her name? I think it's Kathy Cantunes. And she says, is the county commission out of compliance with the county ordinance? And she brings up to light a new issue, which I've never heard. And this controversy about Warm Mineral Springs, a key obligation of the county, is missing. Where is Warm Mineral Springs' work plan? As required by county ordinance section 90-67D. It states that Sarasota County, or she states that Sarasota County and Northport jointly purchased that property back in 2010. That 81 acres of Warm Mineral Springs was purchased for $5.5 million by both the county and the city. Land purchased through the county's park acquisition program is subject to having a work plan. So once again, she says, where is the work plan and the land management plans? It appears that another example of the city commission floating their own policies, as in the failure to implement the whole sections of the 2050 plan, which is a whole other issue. How does land purchased through the park acquisition program over 3 years ago in 2010 get the bypass of the county ordinance and oversight by the County Parks Advisory Committee is her question. The 2010 election of the Northport Commissioners Cook, DeFranco, and Yates resulted in a Northport Commission WMS philosophy of preservation and maintaining the site as a public park. The park was closed on the 30th due to the concessionary license expiring, operating agreement or license if you want to call it. The park's closure caused the nearby real estate market to decline and while would-be park members and visitors were denied access into the park, it recently opened back up. This temporary company's operating it for $48,280 a month, which I got to tell you is a lot of money because I don't think they're pulling in that much monthly. After the June 24th meeting, the city of Northport and the county agreed to development plans. They reviewed two proposals, and one is, which I've covered here numerous times, that the county supports, which is turning more into an attraction-type park with hotels, shops, spas, and stuff like that. And it seems like the city of Northport is saying, well, that's fine, but we want to keep it the way it is. And so, the point I've made several times is, where were you guys back in 2010? Where were you guys to discuss this? A lot of the current members with the county and the city were still part of those commissions, and they should have been talking to each other before going into this land purchase deal. Then they should have made a concrete agreement as to what the plan or strategy was going forward before they signed the dotted line and paid for it. I mean, it just baffles me that these two entities did not sit down and discuss the direction of Warm Mineral Springs prior to going into a partnership together. Now you got someone like Barbetta, who's a term limit on the county. He's walking out of meetings with the Northport City Commission because he just has so much disdain for them. And then he comes out and says, where's your leadership? You guys need to act respectable when you come up here. And it's like, who do you think you are, Barbetta? That guy really needs to go. That's a whole nother story. But then the Northport Commission is a joke. That Mayor Blutcher is a joke, and I'm glad he's got to end the term limits there, because these people are destroying that city with some of their decisions or inactions. As we heard about just the other day, a resident was going to be on an advisory board, but they couldn't come to terms. They're sitting there arguing, and lo and behold, they never filled the position. So not sure what's happening up there in Northport. She says that the county commission owes the public some answers. Was there ever a working plan? If so, what does it say? She has not seen it. Has the staff prepared a management plan? If so, what does it say? If not, why not? Can neighborhood parklands be given to a private entity for their use as collateral? Because one of the deals, and I did not know this until I read this blog, the county is basically the county is for an agreement where this company will come in and get a piece of Warm Mineral Springs as their own piece of property. Then they're going to use that as collateral to go out and get more money for loans. So what role does the Park Advisory have in determining the future of WMS, Warm Mineral Springs? So some good, solid questions by Kathy. I don't know if she'll get any answers. I do plan on talking and asking Paul about his position on Warm Mineral Springs on Wednesday, along with Steve McAllister, who's a write-in candidate for the Sarasota County Commission, in his interviews next week. Sarasota, this is about the lightning could have been the cause of the brush fire over the weekend. There were a few brush fires over in the Northport area, right by Lamarck Elementary. Crews from 4 different agencies had to respond out there to the Mayaca. It was about 78 acres. They had Sarasota County, Inwood, Venice Fire crews, all along with the U.S. Forest Service out there trying to put this out. And they're saying now that it's under investigation to see what happened out there. Road work. I just put out something else from the administrative guy over there, the foreigner. I forget his name with the city of Venice, but he touched on this road work again. Beginning Monday, which is today, Bahama Street between Milan and Indian Avenue will be closed to traffic. Workers will widen and pave the street adjacent to the Venice High School. They also will be intermittent lane closures on Indiana Avenue South to the shopping center. I think the other email that I just put out on the Venice Scoop was on Miami and some road blockage issues, though. Let's see. The next one we have is revitalization. I was wondering what this building was going to be. You know, it is, if you drive down the street where this house is going, there's houses down there. But right where it's at, it's sort of like a buffer. There's that. This building that they're putting up across the street is like a little corner store. And then maybe 20, 30, 40 feet down is where houses start off the road. I thought this was some kind of small restaurant or something. I didn't realize it was going to be a house. I personally would not want a house right there, right at that location on 41. It does have an awesome view. You're overlooking the bay. I just don't know if they're going to get a lot of takers and how that's going to impact the value of it. But this is this guy, Bill Rowland, stood on the deck overlooking down a bay. He looked west, recalling vibrant sunsets and the lure of his silver land next to US 41, his sliver land. He paid $290,000 back in 2005 for that 0.38 acres of land, and he says it's absolutely gorgeous. It took several years for Rowland to get his 2-story turquoise building under construction, but it's one of the signs of the renewal, and that's what it's all about. They're discussing the renewal down there. You know, they mentioned Bayside Grill, which has been there for a year or two. They did go under some new owners when Pat left. You got that, there's another new restaurant there. I think it's listed on here. Cafe Evergreen. But that's about it. And they keep talking about how it's expanding. But then you look at the place right across the street where Ollie's used to be and the golf cart place. Those are 2 businesses that left. Now, the Venice Dive Shop did come in and take over part of that building, but they're still down 1 business there. A lot of people were concerned about the Center of Hope because right across from Captain Eddie's at that building, the Center of Hope has just purchased it, and that's basically going to be their new location, which a lot of local business leaders were a little upset. So I don't know if I'm buying the revitalization. I like the positive story. I like that they're thinking that. I just don't know if I'm buying it. And the other ones, I think, is Anita's. She's redoing her whole building right there. So some things are happening. I don't know if I'd consider it revitalization. Nokomis Beach is still closed, and more testing needs to be done. They're hoping to have it reopened by tomorrow. Yes, it's closed due to the high levels of bacteria primarily found in animal waste. Our lovely beaches. I personally attribute it to a lot of those runoffs that we have, the street runoff. I know somebody responded, I forget his name, he's on a Northport Scoop a lot, but he's saying that it all goes through one center and then disperses out into the waterways where it's cleaned and filtered. I just don't know if I'm buying that. I was down looking at one of the runoffs, and at the beach end, it was open, and I went to the other end, and it was basically open. It was just running in there. So, I mean, unless the filter's right there at that end, you're not going to clean the water out. So, it continues to be an issue, continues to be a concern. They were going to put a French reservoir, I think they call it, in there, and basically the one they planned out was over by Sharky's, I think, when I saw the drawing. This was like over a year ago, and we haven't heard anything about it. Cost about $30,000 to $40,000, and it was basically going to be almost like an island oasis in the middle of the sand with a bunch of trees, and basically the street runoff would drain into this this reservoir, and the sun would kill all the bacteria and everything bad, and before the water went into the environment. But we haven't heard much from it again. And I don't know if I buy that that's going to happen. You know, we'll wait and see what happens there. All right, and crime. Shooting wall. A Sarasota man who fired a bullet through his apartment wall and into his neighbor's home was arrested by Manatee County Sheriffs on Thursday. The deputies responded to an apartment, and basically shortly after 11 p.m., this guy was shooting into the wall. So some intelligence in use there. We got a new offender in Northport. I think it's Northport, is in Nokomis. This is in Northport, an out-of-state offense, other state sexual misconduct back in 2007. So welcome Dante Nelson to the Northport area. And lastly but not least is this story. It was just interesting, and somebody said, why is this any of my business on the Sarasota Scoop page? And I have to ask the same thing. Why is it any of our business? Obviously, somebody at the Herald and probably an officer has an issue with this guy. He is a well-respected, well-known defense attorney, so I'm sure the police aren't huge fans of him. Officers were called to investigate a suspicious van. The guy in there said, hey, look, I dropped the prostitute off at this guest house. I'm just waiting on her. The officers asked the attorney, Derek Baird, what was going on when he came out in his wardrobe with the girl. He said, hey, we're just friends. I'm helping her out. She's down and out. No action was taken. The guy wasn't arrested. Nothing was really done. So it looks like it's just a campaign by the Herald and the police department to make this guy look ridiculous. And I picked it up because we pick up whatever they put out. Modern day education. Why we need... Oh, I already did this for you guys. Sorry about that. Benderson Park. This is neat. I'm a veteran, so I'm a fan of this. It's Nathan Benderson Park will host, and I also do stand-up paddleboarding, surfing, cruising. I used to do a lot of racing, not as much. They're going to host the first official event for wounded military veterans in conjunction with a nonprofit group, Operation Second Chance. It's going to be on November 8th. Veterans and Southwest Florida residents are invited to participate. It's a 5K run around Benderson Park and a SUP race on the lake. All fees collected for the race will go towards Operation Second Chance. It's a Maryland-based group that puts together events to benefit the nation's veterans. Some veterans used adapted equipment to help them paddle or run the race. And it should be a fun, interesting event. And I'll probably put out more about that. Always supporting our fellow veterans out there. Now we're going to get into my interview. This is with Eric Ganoff. Now, the interesting thing about this is, let me get it started and then we'll pause.
Director.
Here we go. All right. This is an individual that's in the bail bond industry. And I did learn a couple interesting things from this interview. So I hope you guys will listen to it. It'll cover a little bit about overcrowding. It covered the fact that bail bondsmen are actually insurance agents. And some of the information he communicated, I was not aware of. So let's go ahead and play that interview for you guys. Enjoy it, and we'll see you back in a little bit.
Because I have a buddy that works for a local bail company. We went to high school together, and he contacted me because he's always concerned that there was this one situation where they let a bunch of sexual predators out that were busted in a sting, and they let them out with just a bracelet. They didn't go through the bail process. And I didn't get the specifics, but he's like, you know, I'm not sure if it's the judge. I'm assuming it's the judges that do that, but he's like, you know, it's putting people's public safety at risk. They're not going through a bail bondsman. They're just releasing them out there, and they can basically just take off if they wanted to.
Yeah, no, when people get released, I mean, judges have a lot of different options at their disposal. Commercial bail, your buddy or our network is pretty much one of those options. Those are typically bail agents are backed by insurance companies, and a bail bond is an insurance policy. The other option they have is judges can just make the defendant pay the full amount of the bond to them, or the judge can actually decide to release them through a pretrial service agency, which is a taxpayer-funded group that sits in the court or in the jail that will actually release that individual, put an ankle monitor on them, and then say they're going to supervise them. But, you know, 5 o'clock rolls around and that employee clocks out for the night. That guy's out there now with really no supervision, or no one really no one has anything on the hook if that guy goes off and does whatever.
Is that really how it works with the ankle bracelets basically after 5 or whatever time? Because I was thinking it was somehow hardwired into the county sheriff or something.
Well, a lot of them will have private companies that monitor those things, but, people forget to charge them. People, cut them off, and maybe they're not monitoring. There's false alarms all the time. So a lot of people think that these monitoring devices are the be-all, end-all to, public safety and the solving the problems of jail overcrowding. But the problem is, the only thing you can be sure of with an ankle monitor is it shows you where the guy was when he typically cuts it off.
Interesting.
And then he goes off and does whatever, and then they'll find him a few months later. Especially when you have, the county responsible for following up on that, and then the sheriff has his hands full.
Right.
He has time to go after all these guys.
So if that's not the solution, what is the solution for the jail overcrowding issue?
Well, I think it's important to understand jail overcrowding, because I think we hear a lot of that nowadays in the media and stuff, and I think the reality of the jail populations is that they've actually gone down nationally. I think 3 of the last 4 years, the only reason this past year hasn't been another downward trend was because California and what's happening out here in terms of all the prisons being overcrowded, so they took all the prisoners and moved them down to the county jails. That was caused the uptick, a significant uptick in the jail populations, and it actually affected the national number. But the big problem is, people are in jail, they're getting arrested for a lot of stuff in those metropolitan cities where you do have overcrowded jails, and the blame often gets put on the bail industry, and people say that people can't afford a bail bond. That's why the jails are crowded, and that's just not true. There really isn't anyone out there who can't afford a bail bond based on the current market conditions and what bail agents do to work with families to create payment plans and do things like that. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the criminal justice system that are pretty much the cause of the jail overcrowding and the processing through that system. It's not commercial bail. If anything, we're the one element that works probably better than anything in making sure that people do show up for court and do have their day in court.
Now, I've never been arrested, so how does that whole process work? Because you only give what? If a bail is $100,000, you have to come up with $10,000. Is that how it works?
So for purposes of simple math, and first off, it's important to preface that bail is regulated differently in every state, and even within states, there's states like Texas that have, I think, 264 counties or something like that, and each one of those counties approaches it a little different. But from a general standpoint, typically someone will get arrested, there'll be charges, they'll get booked, and then a judge or a magistrate will set a bond amount. So for simple math purposes, we'll say it's $10,000.
Okay.
Like I said before, you can put up the full amount of that bond. The family could, so they can go put $10,000 up at the court, and then if that defendant goes through all their court appearances, and then the case is over, the court will return that money minus any court costs and fees. Which will typically end up maybe being 10% anyway. So to think that you're going to get all your money back, that never really happens. They'll take something out along the process. Now, the other option is you can go to a commercial bail agent where you're basically buying an insurance policy. So you're going to put up a $10,000 bond. On average around the country, it varies, 8% up to 15%, but I'd say 10% for an even number. You'll put up $1,000, and that's a non-refundable $1,000 that goes to that bail agent to purchase that insurance policy. Now, what that bail agent will do is they'll make sure that you show up for court, and because if you don't, he is on the hook now for the bond. He's on the hook for that $10,000. So he's going to go out of his way to make sure that you know when your court dates are, remind you the night before, the week before, and then if you don't show up, he's going to call you and make sure that you do get back to court.
Or go get the dog?
Well, I usually time how long it is before someone brings that, but when you talk about fugitive recovery agents like Dwayne Chapman, dog, everyone knows him at, it's a little bit of a glorified industry. I think Hollywood and reality television and crime novelists have even glorified that element of the bail process because, like I said, bail is an insurance product being sold by insurance salesmen that happen to be called bail bondsmen. If I were to, create a reality television show about an insurance agent underwriting an insurance policy, it'd be the most boring television show in the world. So they gravitate on that 1% or half of 1% of people that say, forget this, I'm not showing up, I'm taking off. And a lot of times, bail agents will go do that recovery by themselves, but every once in a while they'll bring in a fugitive recovery agent, which a lot of them are typically former law enforcement, former military. They have very strong backgrounds. They're trained very well. I'll go out and get those guys back, which is, one of those things that makes bail so effective is that those defendants know that, hey, if I don't show up, I know someone's going to come and get me, as opposed to if I know I was released through the courts and I had someone working in a pretrial service office agency monitoring me and tracking. If I don't show up, I know no one's going to come get me. I know a warrant's going to be issued. It's going to be put on a stack of warrants at the police department or sheriff's office, and then eventually maybe I'll get caught if I get pulled over for committing, a traffic violation or committing another crime. Then they'll find me for that other warrant.
All right. Well, let me ask you this: with the criminals that are out there, how are these individuals who break laws out there? How are they being held accountable besides just throwing them in jail? Is there any accountability out there when they're released? And I guess that's the calling issue. They got to call you guys. They got to.
I think the accountability comes in the fact that when someone's released on a commercial bail bond, a financially secured bond, which means that they've got money on the line, the bail agent has money on the line, the family typically has money on the line. That's where you create this circle of influence around this defendant to make sure they show up. We think the accountability is in the fact that they're going to show up for court. Because if there's a crime victim out there, someone that's been victimized, you want to make sure that person has their day in court. So when that defendant shows up for other court appearances, you know that there's going to be a chance of justice happening for that individual, for even the defendant. Now, when that person doesn't show up for court, the county spends a ton of money preparing for a trial that never happens. You have a victim that's basically been re-victimized. I mean, the University of Texas at Dallas just did a study, and it quantified how much it costs when someone doesn't show up for court in Dallas County, and it was a little over $1,700 per defendant.
Wow.
That the taxpayers pay when someone doesn't show up. Now, that doesn't take into social costs, because that guy's out there maybe potentially committing more crimes. So there's a lot at stake from a taxpayer standpoint, from a public safety standpoint, and we like to think that commercial bail really maintains that accountability in the system to make sure that people are having their day in court, that victims get a chance at justice, and that taxpayers aren't getting, given the cold shoulder when it comes to wasting money to have a trial that never happens.
See, I did not realize the cost was that high for a missed court date, about $1,700.
Well, they calculated over the year. I think it ended up being over $11 million that was saved by Dallas County.
Yeah.
And that's just one county, $11 million by using commercial bail as opposed to other forms of release.
Now, you said that a lot of people would credit the fact that jails are overcrowded because the bail is set too high or something. It's not really the bail set too high. You said they blame the bellsman. What's that connection there? Because, I mean, there's other variables that go into overcrowding, but that's one of them.
There's so many things that go into overcrowding, but I think the easy scapegoat, and when you have a public sector pretrial community that really doesn't like the concept of what they refer to as money bail, is how they refer to the financially secured bail industry. It's very easy to kind of point the finger at us. And also, when you have an industry that has a reputation like we do, that's been generated by the media of being these guys running through the streets with bulletproof vests, I think we're an easy target for that. And our job is to try to educate people that bail doesn't really play that role. More than 50% of bail agents in this country are women. That's not something a lot of people know because it's a little less glamorous potentially than the guys running through the streets. But bail serves a pretty important role, making sure those people show up. But when it comes to jail overcrowding, the easy argument is that people are sitting there. The argument they make against is that 70% or 80% of the people in the jails are sitting there because they can't afford a bail bond. But if you look at the people that are actually in those prison populations, what you'll find is that there's people there that are on probation violations who are not eligible for bail. There's people there that have committed a crime, even though they're in pretrial status, it's too violent that they can't be released. Or they're there awaiting trial, transfer to another jail or transfer to prison, or they're there on an immigration hold. So you have a lot of people that are potentially in those jails for other reasons. Even though they're in pretrial status, it doesn't mean they're necessarily eligible for bail. In LA County, they did a study where initially it was 70% of the population of the jail was pretrial. And when you removed all those people, only 12% of those people were actually bailable. And those 12%, those people do typically get out. When you've got family members and you've got bail agents, they're working together, they'll find a way to make sure that person gets home to go to work and take care of their family.
That makes me wonder if the requirements to get bail are too difficult. Because you said anybody that violates a probation's easy to violate. I mean, it could be someone just going next door or down the road, right? And you're violating a probation. You walk by a strip club you weren't supposed, or your buddy's a convicted felon. He stops by your house. They get wind of it, and you're in violation of your probation.
Man, whatever those restrictions are, they're.
Are they too strict? Do you think?
Yeah, that's probably a question a little beyond my realm. But say whether something's too strict or not. But I think that if you're gonna, we all have the right to bail. I mean, it's in the Constitution, the Bill, right? It's making sure that if you are going to let somebody out pre-trial, listen, I'm someone, I've got young kids at home, other people have families out there. The bail industry is comprised of people with families taking care of other families. We don't just let people out, and I think that's the misperception. A judge determines whether someone's eligible for bail. What the bail industry does is they work with the family. Our customer isn't the guy in jail. Our customer is the family of the guy. We're working with them to facilitate the release of that individual, and we want to make sure that if that person's going to get out, that they're going to show up for court, and that they're not going to be out there committing additional crimes while they're out there. So, bail agents take this responsibility pretty strongly, and they're going to go out. They don't want to be the guy that lets someone out that goes out and hurts somebody. So they're going to make sure that they, that go through that underwriting process to look at all those things, look at the guy's background, look at how many people in the family are going to be around that, because that defendant doesn't want to mess his family over either, because if Aunt Jenny puts up her house, nephew Nikki's not going to want to run away, so she loses her house. So there's that financial incentive in that kind of sphere of influence or circle of love that we create through that process to make sure that he's going to perform and show up for court.
What percentage of these guys, though, that are out on bail recommit a crime? Is there a percent out there?
It's low. I mean, when typically people, as compared to when they're out to a pretrial service agency or out on their own recognizance with no one really watching them at all,
yeah.
When someone has family involved, when someone has their money on the line, their own, they're not only going to make sure they're not only going to show up for court more often than not. And I mean, when you look at the failure to appear rates of the bail industry and how many people eventually don't go to, I mean, you're talking in that half of 1%, 2%. I mean, just you have to because of the math. If you think about it, I'm a bail agent. I'm putting myself out there $10,000 I'm responsible for, and I'm only collecting 1,000. If I get 9 out of 10 guys back, I go out of business. You got to get 99 out of 100 guys back, or the math doesn't work. And for the fact that the bail industry's been around as long as it has, it shows you that we're effective in what we do. And so we have to be in those less than 1%, less than 2%. Failure to appear rates and getting those people back to court. And more often than not, when you're showing up for court, when you have family involved in your bail, you're not out there committing additional crimes because you don't want to get in trouble and have them get financially responsible for that.
Well, let me ask you this: with the immigration issue that's happening with the border, do you guys expect an uptick in the number of people you're going to have to be bailing out, maybe due to overcapacity at the prisons, due to crimes by some of the immigrants that are coming in? Because a lot of people are saying a lot of them are gang related. And
if I can know the future and know how many people are committing crimes, I'd probably use that gift elsewhere.
Have you guys ever noticed an uptick when the immigration flow increases? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that it would logically make sense that if you have more people out here that have a bent towards maybe doing illegal activity, that you're going to see an increase. But a lot of our business is driven by arrests, and when there's room, that maybe they arrest more people to fill up that space. So we're really driven by the people that are kind of put through the system and what happens there. So there's a lot of that's out of our control leading up to that. But like I said, our focus is to make sure that when people are in that system is going to work as effectively as possible, and making sure that people do show up for court, making sure that victims get a chance at justice, that the public's kept safe, and that the criminal justice system has a chance to work. I mean, think about it. The promise that we make through a commercial bail bond is pretty much the only thing that's guaranteed in our criminal justice system whatsoever, with someone standing behind it. And when you think about bail in that way, it becomes a very powerful, compelling part of the system that we think is indispensable and really helps keep things the wheels of justice in a way moving.
Yeah, and I think bail bondsmen are
definitely appreciated and are a credit to the community, because you want them there to help some people that are disadvantaged and can't afford a $10,000 bill. They can go to you guys. I think a lot of people have that perception, though, like you said, where the bail bondsman is just letting this criminal out in the street and they're not really watched that closely. Unfortunately, I think that's a perception out there by a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you go to our website, expertbail.com, we have a whole section there called Making a Difference, and it's stories about bail agents that are doing things in their community, starting nonprofits to help, cure cancer, or putting together organizations that help young boys that get in trouble to mentor them to get them out of trouble, or young women that get pregnant as teenagers, helping them get college scholarships so that if they do decide to have the child, to maintain their education. So, I mean, once again, I think, it's easy to put that stuff on television and in the movies and then really position bail agents as scumbags, because you can sell more movie tickets that way. You sell a lot less movie tickets talking about...
the insurance agent.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I've talked to media outlets where we had a woman the woman that started the organization that helps the teenage girls that get pregnant. And we said, hey, we have this great event happening where these college scholarships are going to be awarded to these young girls. Would you like to come cover this? And they said, oh, no, we already have our bail story. We have these women in tight tank tops running through the streets with their pink handcuffs. And you're just, that's what people want to kind of portray the industry as. I mean, there's so much good, but unfortunately, it's the bad that seems to get more eyeballs for the media for some reason.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your site? Now, you're basically a network where if I went in and typed in my zip code to see if there was a bail bondsman when I went in on your site. And that's basically it. If you're in trouble, you need a bail bondsman, you go to your site, which is expertbail.com, right?
Yep.
And go ahead, take it from there.
No, and I think, we saw about 4 years ago, and I work for an insurance company, one of the largest insurance underwriters in the country. And so what we saw about 4 or 5 years ago was that consumers don't know a lot about the bail industry, and there really wasn't a national kind of branded entity in the industry that could help guide and educate people about this process. So we created Expert Bail as the first national brand, kind of an endorsement brand, to be able to put on agents around the country that consumers, if they saw that brand, they'd say, okay, I can trust that guy. I know things are going to go well, and he's going to treat me the right way. And so we created expertbail.com, the site, to educate people about bail, to help them find a trusted agent, and to really kind of just make sure that, if people needed, at a time where you're really confused and you're scared, you don't know what to do, that there'd be that trusted resource for you to be able to kind of find out how that process works, and then to find someone to help you get it. And so you go to that site, type in your zip code, and a list of agents will come up. You can call one of them, you can call us, and we'll help locate an agent for you. There's videos that teach you about the bail process. We write a great blog. It has a post pretty much every day, and it's kind of funny stories out there, people doing things, where someone posts something on Facebook of them siphoning gas out of a police cruiser, and then realizes why they got, or kind of confused why they got arrested the next day. So, but we try to make it a little entertaining and enjoyable at the same time, kind of educate people about something that's pretty important.
Well, and you know what? From a common folk, someone like myself that's never really been arrested, I think when I was 18 I had an open container, but that was over 30 years ago. I wouldn't know what to do. So sites like yours are beneficial because I can go there, I can watch the video, I can get some insight, I can, you get that warm, comfy feeling when you're going through a network like yours trying to find a bail bondsman versus going down where you see a bunch of, generally my buddy's place, and his name's Dennis, he has like some thug that's usually sitting in front, and I'm thinking, I don't want to go near there.
Yeah, no, it's you talk to a lot of consumers, and when we did this process, we talked to a lot of consumers and bail agents just about how that process works and their experiences, and most people are scared to death. I mean, I listen to a lot of phone calls throughout the day, and most of the calls would be like, the person starts off, I kind of don't really know what my husband was, or my boyfriend, or my wife, and it's interesting to listen to that fear. And then when you have someone that can explain that process to them, you can see the fear kind of gets alleviated a little bit. And you talk to a woman bail agent about when that someone first comes in their office, and the expectation that person has, it's going to be some guy that they're going to be scared of. It's going to be some huge muscle-bound guy. He's going to have a cigar. It's going to be a dingy room, and I'm basically going to be signing my firstborn child away. And the reality is, someone walks in that office, they see a woman, that woman's there to help, or they see that bail agent that's friendly, and there's like a weight lifted off their shoulders that they realize, oh, this is what it's like. It's not what so it's something that you kind of unfortunately have to kind of go through the experience, but what we're trying to do is put a little bit of that experience before it ever happens, so that people maybe can approach it in a more positive, confident way with a little less fear.
Yeah, and don't take this the wrong way, but I hope I never need your services.
Yeah, it's a very common tagline in bail is that you never want to need us, but you want to know us if you have to need us or something.
There you go.
A lot of taglines around that.
Why don't you go ahead and plug your site one more time? If you have an email you want anyone, or Facebook or any of that stuff that people can reach out to you at.
Yeah, it's www.expertbail.com, and we're on Facebook. We have about 20,000 fans on Facebook. Like I said, we post our blog every day. Website's got great information, great videos, things like that. And if you want something to kind of amuse yourself, definitely check out our blog.
Okay, and to the listening folk, I do have it on the banner there, and when I put this out on YouTube, I will put links to his website and his Facebook page. Well, thanks a lot, Eric. It's been great interview, and
there you go. That was Eric, folks, with a solid interview, interesting interview. I, for one, did not realize that they were basically insurance agents, and that they would, or that whole process involved. And he did enlighten me on some information there. So it's always good to watch this stuff and get enlightened and learn new things, which is one of the reasons why I like doing those interviews. But now I get to go into what I really like doing, which is opining about alternative news at the national, international level, which impacts us at our local level. For some reason, this is where I find most of my joy going through this whole process on this radio. And one thing is with troops in Somalia, and this is just something that came out. You may say, well, how troops in Somalia impact me? It impacts you because that could be your brother, that could be your friend's brother, that could be your husband, that are sent off to a foreign country, and in this situation, you're sent there by a president versus Congress. And here's the issue, folks. Both are guilty. The Republican Bush and the Democrat Obama, both administrations have conspired to send at least 120 U.S. troops to Somalia, and without the consent of Congress. This is per Reuters, folks. U.S. military advisors have secretly operated in Somalia since 2007. We're just hearing about it. Washington plans to deepen its security assistance there. The deployment consists of 120 troops on the ground, and it goes beyond the Pentagon's January announcement, which said they had sent a handful of advisors there. Here's the issue. Under the Constitution of Congress, and not the president, Congress is given the sole power to make the rules for the government and regulation of land and naval air forces in addition to war powers, making the 7-year deployment blatantly unconstitutional. The actions of both Bush and Obama's administration are similar to the disastrous ones back in 92-93. I was in the Navy then. I was a veteran. And 18 American service members were killed and dragged through the streets. And I remember as I was sitting there with my Navy buddies seeing that, we were just in awe, and it was very upsetting. So a lot of people don't really want troops over in Somalia. They don't want to. They have too many harsh or bad feelings after what happened before. The intervention in Somalia is perhaps and similar in several ways the increasing involvement of the United States in Vietnam. We started off there with just advisory roles, and what did that blow up to with the Eisenhower and the Kennedy administrations? So you really should be concerned about this, folks. American soldiers in Somalia are there to back the new national government, and that government only controls a quarter of the country's territory. And the questions remain, as the U.S. military becomes increasingly more involved in Somalia, will Congress continue to pass on the president its exclusive constitutional powers to make the rules for the military? Will more American soldiers die to then defend a shadow Somali national government without a chance of succeeding politically? Why are all American servicemen lives being put at risk for a political policy goal that has zero relationship to the national security of America? And what does the futile deployment say about the value that the president's put on soldiers' lives? These are questions we should be asking ourselves, folks. That's something I put out on my Educate Inspire page, which you can see at any time. Just go and by there. It's on Facebook. On the governor's race, and I guess a lot of it's coming down to the budgets. This is between Governor Scott and Governor Chris. Tax Watch is a nonpartisan group, and they just went through the numbers, and basically it's tick for tack. You know, they're saying like Chris' state budget, he runs a lot more leaner. He dropped like $70 billion out of his budget when he was in there, but the rise in state spending can help Scott make his case that he boosted critical state programs instead of education. But they just go through this whole thing and touching on the differences with the budget. I thought it was interesting, but you know what? Nothing concrete. You don't see anything that says this is where Scott stood, this is where Chris stood. You'd see them both basically going and appeasing two different groups. I don't know. You know, it all is going to come down to the debates and what you're for and what interests they're pushing on their agenda. You know, I don't like either one of them, so I don't want to go into too much detail on them. But you know, in my case, I'm going to be probably going with the better of the two evils. Scott is out on his Keep Florida Safe tour right now. Governor Rick Scott, he's kicking off the Let's Keep Florida Safe tour today. It's a new policy proposal that will help make Florida's communities the best in the country to call home. With Florida crime rate at a 43% low, Governor Scott's Let's Keep Florida Safe plan will continue to move the state in the right direction, he says, by giving law enforcement and public safety officials the tools they need. What are some of the tools that they will have? Maintain 85% mandatory minimum sentencing. Developing programs that identify early signs of risk and working to help troubled youth become successful adults. I had a guy on here that was talking about that. I think his name was Ken Thompson. I did an interview a couple weeks ago where he was talking about doing stuff like that. Giving law enforcement agencies the tools and funding they need to fight crime, predict crime, and bring swift justice to those who commit crime. What that tells me is to militarize our police force even more so than it is now, which I think I got a road rant later in the show if we have time, but that I'm not a huge fan of that. That just tells me that they're just going to make them more militarized and violate more of our rights, what I'm saying. Working with state and local enforcement and prosecutors to combat cybercrime, which can be good and can be bad, depends on the situation. All right, school lunches impacts your kids. You know, are they eating the school lunches? Mine take lunch to school. Many school districts are upset over the Obama's fight with the school lunch rules, saying it's costing them a ton of money that they just don't have. Normally first ladies typically avoid getting into the public scraps, but Michelle has jumped right in there and she's battling it out. She's fighting with House Republicans' efforts to soften a central part of her prized anti-childhood obesity campaign, and says she's all ready to fight until the bitter end. Obama even mocked the GOP effort in an opinion column and argued her case before her Twitter fans when she was weeping. Obama lobbied largely behind the scenes for 4 years ago for the Healthy Hungry Kids initiative, which took away Medicaid money to fund that program. It requires more fruits, vegetables, whole grains in school meals, along with less sodium, sugar, and fat, which to me, this is all a good thing. The problem is I, as a parent, want to dictate this to my kids. Now, if they're in there buying lunch with money I'm giving them, and I give them direction on what they need to buy, that's so be it. But I could see where if the school or the county or the city's financing it, that's a little different story. It's a free lunch program. Maybe adhere to these government policies. The School Nutrition Association originally supported the standards and has now turned against them. The association says it fully supports getting kids to eat healthier, just like I do. but says many districts are losing money because students aren't buying the healthier lunches. A lot of students have stopped buying. More than 1 million fewer students eat lunch at school each day since this Healthy Kid initiative. How can you call these standards a success when they're driving students away from the programs, folks? You can't, can you? Her group wants more flexibility in the district for trying to control losing money if they're going to be stuck with this plan. Look, these school districts are under a lot of pressure as it is. It's costing them, to get the healthier food, it's going to cost more money. A lot of the food is just being tossed in the garbage. I get and I appreciate what Michelle was trying to do, and I think her heart was in the right place. I just don't want government in dictating to me how to raise my kids. I don't want to pick up the extra cost as a taxpayer that it's going to cost the school district to go out there and purchase and follow through with this Healthy Initiative program. And then what about all the entitlement, the Medicaid entitlements that were taken away from many people to cover this program, and many of the same people's kids probably aren't even eating that food. So they're getting the double whammy. All right, the next thing, fracking. I'm doing this fracking because we do have 2 permits, one off the South Venice coast and one down by Inglewood. It's the same company, and I did a rant on it. If you go to my theroguerant.com, you can find it on there about fracking. But they're permitted, but they're not actually drilling it yet, and they're probably a long ways off. But it's good information. We need to get ourselves informed, educated now, so that we can try to fight this activity later when they start. There's just 4 wastewater wells in Oklahoma where energy companies dump water after completing the hydraulic fracturing process. And it's caused a score of earthquakes this year, some 30 kilometers from a site, according to the new study by the U.S. universities. In this report, they focused on Midwestern states, which have produced 45% of the country's magnitude 3 or greater seismic shocks in the last 5 years, with the numbers rising rapidly to match the intensification of fracking activities in the area. While hydraulic fracturing or fracking poses an inherent risk of earthquakes, according to the authors, the biggest culprits were the wastewater wells, where the liquids used for fracking are pumped once the reservoir is open. There are more than 4,500 active disposal wells in the state, but scientists found that 4 of them are causing some major issues where they had about 5 million barrels taken out of there. So the impacts of fracking, I've covered other issues. That's just one of a few issues that I've covered in the past. The Chikungunya disease, you're hearing more and more about it. This is a breed of mosquito that is invading the U.S. and it could carry this terrifying disease. The Chikungunya fever and the Asian tiger mosquito, 2 names you may not know unless you watch this show, but they may threaten your health, folks. In Swahili, Chikungunya means walking bent over, referring to the fact that those who contract the disease often have trouble walking due to headaches, rashes, fevers, and most paralyzing joint pain. Before late last year, the disease was concentrated primarily in Africa and Asia, but now it threatens America's shores as a mosquito that carries it. The Asian tiger mosquito is expanding as far north as New York and Chicago, and there's no cure for this disease, according to the CDC. And while cases are rarely fatal, thousands have contacted the disease. The CDC reports 129 cases of the disease in the U.S. so far. I think we had 1 here locally, maybe 2, I can't recall. But as the Asian tiger mosquito spread, so does the Chikungunya fever. These mosquitoes are opportunistic. They breed nearly everywhere. Unlike most mosquitoes, they bite all day long. Nor do they mind having their blood meal interrupted by an attempted swatting. They just fly away and find another victim. The Asian tiger mosquito is also adapting its behavior and is able to ignore the onset of autumn, postpone its hibernation, and extend its egg-laying season, all which brings about many concerns for all of us, and should for you. The meaning of the 4th of July, this is one that I pulled up over the weekend, and I forgot exactly what I was going to discuss on this. Yeah, we're not going to cover that. That's old news. All right. Sorry. Sometimes I put this stuff together. Now, this next thing, it's all on the Democrat, or not the Democrats, on immigration, folks. Immigration's all over the news today. They're finding more and more kids have tuberculosis, other diseases, scabies, they have lice. We're finding many of these issues and many concerns. With the TB, this guy he was on Fox News, but I don't think he was a Fox News reporter. I think he was NBC or something like that. An investigative reporter went out to one of the camps out by Austin, and I think it was by Austin, and he found, his sources are telling him that there's a few people with TB, and they're not isolated like they should be. This is a highly contagious disease. They're kept out in the general area with everybody else, and no actions being taken to separate them from the general population. That's one concern, one of many concerns with the diseases. Many of them are gang members. They're using the kids as mules. Now, you got to think, well, why is this being done? Who's this benefit? George Bush was really dramatically lax on illegal immigration. Okay, he was not that great. Obama is even more lax, and that laxity has resulted in tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors just pouring across our southern border from Central America. The Democrats continue to promote higher spending, placing more and more Americans on the public roads. In 2013, a record 1 out of 5 American households used food stamps, which I think I did a real rant on the other day. A record number of Americans were dependent on the federal government with regards to higher education debt. Overall, a full 49% of Americans receive some form of federal benefits. Adding millions of illegal immigrants to the public roads, which will happen in terms of lower education and health care by necessity, will skyrocket our spending. Many on the right believe that Democrats are pursuing the so-called Cloward and Piven strategy, in which sociologist Cloward and Pivens posited that by overloading welfare rolls, the Democratic Party would be forced to take heavy federal welfare action to save the state and local governments. But some don't believe that's what the Democrats are up to. The modern Democratic Party is significantly less interested in guaranteed benefits than the economic leveling. The motivating factor of the left is not caring for the poor, but tearing down the wealthy. The philosophy of the Democratic Party was embodied by Barack's response to a moderator question in 2008 when he said, "I would like at raising the capital gains tax for the purpose of fairness." Fairness, not prosperity, but fairness. And so the Democrats would move to bankrupt the system. No welfare state can survive with an open border, folks. That is truism. And yet, that's exactly what the Democrats are now promoting, open borders with full welfare state. So why? Why not? Because Democrats believe that the homegrown poor in America will be better off with more people joining them on the dole. They won't, folks. Rather, Democrats love the size and scope of the state and despise the rival the state faces in individual success. A growing welfare base requires higher taxation, more degradation, and of individual success, and that seems to be their overall goal. You talk about a lot of these border towns too, and just the meltdown they're going through with the financial drain that these immigrants are having on them in terms of housing them, helping them out, busing them, and the federal government is not coming in to help. We said last week Obama went to Texas, or he's going to Texas, and for a fundraiser, but he's not going by the border, and he has no plans to. He says he can't be everywhere. The vast majority of the 50,000 unaccompanied youths and children who have illegally crossed the Texas border during the last few months have been successfully delivered by federal agencies to the relatives throughout the United States, folks. That includes Florida. A second New York Times article report revealed that officials have caught an additional 240,000 Central American migrants since April. And they're transporting many of them through destinations throughout the United States, folks. And that's how it impacts us here in Venice, in Sarasota, in Inglewood, in Northport. President policy has caused protests by frightened citizens in such towns as Marietta, but now he's starting to bring out National Guard to quell those protests, bring out the sheriffs to quell that protest. But Obama's allies are eager to escalate the conflict and to paint the protesters as racist. The protesters may escalate before the November elections. And they're not saying we're racist, folks. They had some pro-immigration activist on the other day, and she said, look, we've always had aliens coming here. Why suddenly don't they want them here? Well, there's a big difference, folks. My dad came here. He went through the legal immigration process. Why did he have to go through that if we're just going to let all these illegals come through? South America seems to be the only illegal immigrants that are allowed in here. And by the way, we're not allowed to call them illegal anymore at the Border Patrol. But if somebody's immigrating from Italy, I go to Angela's Market a lot. Her mom's in town. She has to leave every 90 days. They're tougher on her. Because why aren't they allowing her to stay here illegally like all the South Americans? So, I mean, this is good food for thought, folks. Why is this happening? Top immigration officials choose not to check if the relative or parents who picked them up of the children are even in the country illegally. They're not even looking at criminal records. The people testing them for health issues don't even really know what you're checking them for. The CDC has confirmed activation of an emergency operations center, and this is in response to the influx after months of federal health agency has basically been blowing it off, saying that it's not our issue. The CDC is responding to public health crisis spurred by a recent surge in illegal immigrants by activating an emergency facility designed to monitor and coordinate emergency responses. They finally admitted to that. Until now, the federal government has remained largely silent on the increased public health concerns linked to this influx. Although numerous border agents have contracted diseases from exposure to afflicted minors, and reports suggest that the influx now, hailing from several parts of the world, may potentially bring with it more deadly diseases. And I was listening to something today, and they said that the TB strain in South America is one that's not curable. Because there's some out there that just aren't curable, and that's one of them. But basically, it looks, how about the jail part? It appears that the government is working hard for the citizens. Unfortunately, they're working for the citizens of other countries and not us. Todd Starnes reports that shocking allegations that a government contracted security force is threatening to arrest medical personnel at Lakeland Air Base if they say or talk to anybody. If they reveal information about the rampant disease among the illegal immigrants at the facility, they can be fired and arrested. Nonetheless, several of these workers have decided to come forward as anonymous. Yes, it gets even worse. A former camp nurse told Starnes that the facility has been inundated with migrants to the extent where it was impossible to control diseases. Instead of separating out the people with TB, they're keeping them all together. So the immigration issue is a issue that impacts everybody directly, and we should all be concerned about it. Another issue that could impact us is Fukushima. Somebody was in Publix the other day, and they had Fukushima shrimp. I think it was my wife shrimp from Fukushima. My wife's like, "Why the heck would I eat this?" And the guy didn't know what she was talking about. High levels of radiation, a lot of contaminated seafood. A lot of sea life is dying out there. Now they got another issue, and a lot of the issues that have been going on out at TEPCO and Fukushima have been silenced. They're not letting the information flow out there. They're trying to keep it under control so that people know very little. Well, they have now a new issue's come up where they have 9 days to basically prevent an unsafe overheating of one of the cores. The operators of the TEPCO have been forced to switch off the cooling system at a mothballed reactor Unit 5 after it was discovered that it had been leaking water for a few days now. In 9 days, the system, if it's not repaired, the system temperatures will exceed dangerous levels. Engineers have discovered that 1,300 liters of water leaked from the cooling system intended to stabilize the temperature of the reactor. The source of the leak is just a 3 millimeter diameter hole near the flow valve. If no cold water is pumped into this thing within 9 days to get it cooled off, you're going to have some major meltdown issues. Since TEPCO is using seawater for many of its cooling needs at the power plant, it has previously encountered heightened levels of corrosion in sensitive equipment. The cooling system at various reactors has also been beset by calamities, from rats shorting out circuit wire to forcing a blackout to an employee accidentally switching it off. At the same, TEPCO is struggling to deal with an ever-increasing volume of contaminated water, which many of you don't hear about in major media. It's being stored in hundreds of tanks and facilities and frequently leaking, contaminating the soil beneath it. And the much publicized plan to stop contaminating the water from leaking into the sea by building an ice wall and freezing soil and water around the facility is not working as well. So many issues continue out there, but you just don't hear about them from major media. So then you get, and I was amazed to see the Publix is selling this shrimp from Fukushima, and then you ask the guy why, and he's like, "What are you talking about? How can anybody be so dumbed down that they don't know what Fukushima is or the impact of Fukushima on the environment? How many people were killed from that when the typhoon hit there? How many people were killed from the radiation from the leaks there? It's disturbing. TEPCO doesn't want it out. The Japanese government doesn't want it out. I don't think the American government really wants that out. And there we go with Fukushima, folks. Again, very, very concerning. And, it's not just there. You have issues here in the United States. When I first started doing the show back in December, when I was doing more of a national one without really touching on local stuff, one of the issues I brought up was the WIP out at the New Mexico. And this is a plant that stores dirty waste, basically, nuclear storage of, it's just dirty waste that they're storing away. But very few Americans who don't live near it have ever heard of the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant, WIP. It's a federal nuclear waste repository approximately 26 miles east of Carlsbad, New Mexico. And some experts are saying that something very serious happened there recently. And I remember when this happened, I was reporting on it, and national media picked it up like a week later. According to the Carlsbad Current Argus, a local newspaper, traces of radiation were found in February following some kind of test at the Carlsbad. The test showed evidence of just trace amounts, they said. The levels detected at the time period are higher than normal background levels of radioactivity from the elements commonly found in the sampling station. Thus, their presence during the specific time frame appears to indicate a small release. They kept saying there's nothing to worry about. John Heedman, the chairman of the Nuclear Task Force, at the time, there's no concern. We definitely know the amounts are minuscule. I think the risks are extremely low and certainly have no worries about its personnel. About it personally. A week prior to the detection, they had a salt truck that caught fire underground at the mine, causing all personnel to be evacuated. Now they're saying, well, this could possibly be a huge dirty bomb. Within days, however, the officials were changing their story. As they were talking to ABC, they said investigators now admit that the problem is serious. A piece of salt is believed to have fallen from a cavern ceiling and crushed drums of waste. Samples from 13 employees on duty that night of the accident indicate that they had inhaled the radioactive americium. Now, months later, some experts think the situation is dire. Chris Harris, former licensed senior radioactive operator and engineer, said that he believes that the part about being hydrogen explosion due to the decomposition of the green kitty litter that causes a whole bunch of problems, and one of them is that it has a huge dirty bomb. Don Hancock, director of the Nuclear Waste Safety Program and administrator of the Southwest Research Information Center, says they have been able to physically get to one of the more containers that exploded or some kind of deflagration. They had pictures of one container that clearly breached, has holes, the lid is off. There are signs that there's a melting around it and small amounts of fire. So clearly something major happened. We still don't know how many containers are involved. I think it's very likely that it's more than one. The reason I think there's a probability more than this were involved because while this particular container has 16 or 17 curies of plutonium and americium in it, which is much larger than amount. He just goes into a bunch of diatribe. You get the point, though. And it was in the air. The United States has sat on this. The New Mexico facility has sat on this, and nobody's really heard about it. I remember major media, they ran the story. They picked it up, like I said, a week later. They ran it once or twice, and then it just disappeared. And the problems continued on. I don't even remember major media reporting about the workers being exposed to it. And for some reason, everybody's trying to keep it hush-hush. I don't know why. I don't think it's something we want to keep hush-hush. So it's concerning to me. And it should be concerning to you guys, too. I got a bunch more to go into. Unfortunately, that interview ran a little long. Unfortunately, a couple things happened today which got in my way. One was the interview ran longer than I thought. The news, I try to do the local news in 30 minutes, and for some reason it took me an hour today. And so the goal is actually to do the local news in about 45 minutes, do an interview from 45 to 1:15, and then 1:15 to 6:45 or 7, the 1:15 hour to the 1:45 or 2 hour to do international local news that impacts us here locally. I'm trying to get better because when I do get that radio show that I was telling everyone about, I got to cut for breaks, which I'm not used to. I'm used to just talking for 2 straight hours. So I'm trying to manage my time more effectively and see how I can handle it. So we're going to call it a night. Remember the Francesco Abbruzzino Show.com. Check out the apparel. Check out Longevity. It's a great protein mix, vitamin mix. Check out the advertising ranks, which involve advertisement on my news show and my Facebook pages and my website. So it gives you a lot of different options. You can call me. We can try to create one that cater it more towards what you're looking for. So we do have some options there. And that's it. Everybody have a great night, and I will see you tomorrow via the scoop pages or the show.